In this video, we'll discuss how to develop a course assessment strategy that is aligned to course outcomes and module learning objectives. In a well-aligned course, the course outcomes, module learning objectives, materials, activities, and assessments should work together to help students meet their learning goals. Thus, when you begin thinking about how you will assess your students, it is a good idea to start with your course outcomes and learning objectives. You should ask a few important questions. What action verbs did you use in your outcomes and objectives? Can you create assessments that allow students to demonstrate meeting those outcomes or objectives? And is that activity at an appropriate level for this course? Let's look at an example of how to answer these questions. Say you have the following course outcome and associated module learning objective in an introductory writing course. Critique a wide range of texts that express multiple perspectives, and summarize and paraphrase portions of scholarly articles. First, let's make sure that the Bloom's knowledge levels that correspond to these examples are appropriate. The verb critique is used at the course level, and it is categorized in the evaluating knowledge level. In the learning objective, the verb summarize resides in the understanding knowledge level. Thus, the knowledge level of the course outcome is much higher than that of the learning objective, which is appropriate. To create the assessment that corresponds with these examples, take a cue from these action verbs. The verb summarize implies that students will be reading and interpreting a text that is presented to them. What could they do to actually demonstrate summarizing? In this case, you might assign a writing exercise that responds to an excerpt from a scholarly article. This activity is appropriate for the course outcome as well, since reading and interpreting a text is a component of critique. There are two types of assessments you can design: formative and summative. Formative assessments are intended to provide students with frequent, immediate feedback, check students' understanding of key concepts, and help them improve what is being assessed. Summative assessment is normally done at the end of the course and is meant to measure the student's demonstration of course outcomes. In other words, they should measure overall competency. Let's break down each of these assessment types. Formative assessments are checkpoints that let you see how students are progressing towards achieving the learning objectives inside a smaller unit of the course, like a module. Therefore, they should be low stakes, meaning that they do not make up a large part of the course grade. These activities are placed throughout the module so that students can self-monitor understanding as they move forward. In this way, they are assessments used for learning. The types of formative assessments we will look at are quizzes, Moodle lessons, and discussion forums. All three of these allow for timely and effective feedback within a module. Quizzes are considered formative because they test knowledge at a foundational level. Each quiz question should be tied to one or more module learning objectives. Automatic grading ensures immediate feedback without the need for instructor interaction. This immediate feedback is important to the formative aspect of the quiz. It contributes to in-process adjustment of learning and studying methods. Again, these are meant to assess students' knowledge of key concepts. They can often serve as a reading check or comprehension assessment. Learning objectives tied to quiz questions typically contain action verbs towards the lower end of Bloom's knowledge levels. The lesson activity in Moodle provides students with the opportunity to practice what they have learned in an interactive format. A lesson progresses through a series of connected pages that contain content and questions or prompts. Students are guided through the lesson based on how they respond to questions or prompts that are presented on the sequential pages. When the student makes a choice on a question or prompt page, the path of the lesson responds to that choice. These activities can be linear, meaning the student progresses through the lesson in the order that the pages are presented, or they can be branched, meaning that their choices guide the direction of the activity. For example, a linear lesson proceeds through questions and can direct students back to review related content if they do not answer correctly. A branched lesson works more like a choose-your-own-adventure activity and can send students down different paths depending on the choices they make. Action verbs and learning objectives associated with lessons should be taken from the middle to lower range of Bloom's knowledge levels, depending on how complex the lesson is. Discussion activities allow students to reflect on topics that they found interesting or challenging and discuss with their fellow students. These discussions are more analytical as they require students to respond thoughtfully to sometimes complex questions. Students can use the discussion forum as a resource to ask and answer questions, or for idea generation as they provide constructive feedback on each other's ideas. An end-of-course reflection can also be a useful tool for students to think through their learning experience and for you to collect feedback on course content and materials. A summative assessment is meant to compare the student's skills and knowledge at the end of the course to the skills and knowledge outlined in the course outcomes. Well-designed summative assessments utilize an authentic project-based approach so that students can demonstrate mastery of course concepts in the context of real-world application. In contrast to formative assessments, which are assessments for learning, these are assessments of learning. Examples of summative assessments might be a case study, a research paper, a presentation, a collaborative project, or a final exam. In a 7-module course, it is recommended that the summative assessment be submitted in Module 6 to give you time for grading. There should also be a course midpoint check in Module 3 to prepare students for the final submission. This may include submission of a preliminary portion of the project, a proposal, or several smaller submissions to build toward the final submission. This approach allows the opportunity for the student to receive critical feedback before the end of the course. You should outline the graded components of your summative assessment in a clear and concise rubric. Other manually graded assessments, such as the forum discussions and reflections, should also utilize a rubric. Rubrics provide consistent grading across all student submissions and allow instructors to present their expectations and standards up front. This helps students to have a clear understanding of what components are required and the level to which they will be graded. Think of your assessment strategy as a means to observe your students' competence. The course outcomes tell them where they will end up when the entire course is done. The learning objectives tell them what they need to do along the way to get there. Finally, the assessments tell them how to make the journey in a way that you can measure. This concludes the assessment strategy video. For more information on the technologies covered in this video, visit groc.lsu.edu. If you have any Moodle or technology-related questions or would like assistance, please contact the Faculty Technology Center at 225-578-3375, option 2, or ftc@lsu.edu.